Welcome in Jazzmeeting. This is a radio TV program in here downtown, but also worldwide.
Okay.
And we had a lot of musicians like Stanley Clark and so forth. So, I'm very honored to have you here in our hometown. And the first question is, what made you all good musicians, but also good people, and for so long time, for so all of the years. So you can
start. You want me to start?
Yes, Darryl.
Sure. Well, you've been missing.
No, it's just my interpretation.
No.
It's no information I get from other things.
No, I think I guess in a way music is a bit of a personal path, a spiritual path, and it seems that the guys who go along that path for long enough, most of them, many of them I should say, seem to be guys that are pretty good people. And so maybe, and then there's I guess a certain kind of brotherhood that exists between musicians. And so we I would say, generally speaking, we treat each other well. I think musicians like other musicians, so we generally show each other the best sides of ourselves.
So do you?
I think it's easier in the long run to treat people how you wanted to be treated. You know what I mean? Just in general, not just as a musician, but in life. But you navigate through life easier when you just treat people the way you want to be treated. So when you do that on stage in a giving kind of way, like the reason why this band sounds good is because everybody's giving to each other, not because they're taking all the time. So you can't turn that on and off. Okay, now I'm doing it on stage, but now I go into the dressing room and now I'm not doing it. Right. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's not separate.
You can't really separate life from music, especially when you play jazz.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yes, okay. Well, Bill.
Nej, bare get the moment in. No, I mean, I think who you are as a person is probably set by the time you're 10 years old. It's your upbringing, I mean, the respect you have for your parents and your family. I mean, me and Darryl were talking about the respect we had for our parents. And, that kind of sets the tone for most of your life. And you realize, like Dean said, it's sort of like, the first thing I do before I get guys in my band over the last 25 years is, how are they as a person, first?
Yeah.
If you're supposed to create music together, you're supposed to it's sort of a dance that you create together on stage, and if you're not grooving with the other person, it's going to be a very strange dance, I mean, a lot of people get off on that, but it's not my thing, I mean, you hear some people say, like, the band was just completely, at war with each other, but what great music. To me, it's not worth that, I mean, it's, I think you actually reach a higher plane when everybody is really grooving on all levels, not just music, because we're fortunate to be able to do music. Yeah. So we're thankful just to be able to be out here doing this.
Yes. And so you're very lucky. Lucky people. When I say, what kind of thoughts do you get when I mention the name Miles?
Again, there's a lot of appreciation for having gone through that period. I've never met anyone who loved music more than he loved it, and I think that along with the G word that everybody mentions, the genius word that everybody mentions, I think that one of the things that people do not often mention is how hard he worked at music and how hard he worked to develop his ability and his sound, and how hard he worked to develop the sound of the band.
And Dean, were you touched by the first note?
Well, you mean just, Miles was the direct path from rock and roll into jazz, you know what I mean? For a lot of people that, people like me that, I really wasn't into jazz at all. Yeah. Even though I was already performing and stuff. And but then it was like, oh, so there's a way to get there, you know, that's different than the sort of regular way that, you know, that everybody usually goes to get to jazz. But that was a long time ago. That was in the late 60s, you know, when I first started performing live and stuff. But the other thing about Miles, like when you asked that question of when you said, you know, what's the first thing when you think when you know, when you say Miles, and the first thing I think is, damn it, because I had a feeling like that I had this very strong feeling that our paths would cross at some point, and you know, unfortunately he passed away. He would. I played with Marcus Miller for many years.
We saw you then in Germany.
Oh, okay. But anyway, we made a record, and Miles is on that record, and so, like I said, it seemed like things were converging, and so you know, I don't want to say that it's one of my greatest regrets, but I would, you know, it's just such a rite of passage to be able to say, you know, like Bill or Darryl, to be able to say that they passed through that, you know, that incredible environment.
Well, it's kind of a interesting question. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I knew him personally, Darryl knew him personally. I mean, who I knew personally and what everybody else thinks, it's two different things, completely. And so it just still amazes me. I mean, as a musician, he was fantastic. You know, he knew what he was doing. He was great at knowing which musicians to use, how to use them. He was a genius at his persona even before he put his trumpet to his lips. Just how he handled himself, and he could guide the world in sort of like, you know. It was really interesting how that worked. And it's also, you know, the world wants to have a Miles Davis. They want to have a person that they can look up to. It's human nature to have someone that's like, this guy. We got to have this guy. And he worked it out so that he had the personality, he had the looks, he had the sort of panache, whatever, through like the years to fit that mold. So it was like he stepped right in there and everybody said, you're the guy. You know, and he continued to sort of, you know, I think it's sort of like, it kept him pushing and everything to one respect, but it was a hard thing to live up to, I think, to a certain degree, you know. If you make your music as esoteric as possible and people don't really understand it, and you're coming from an area where they call you the great, the wonderful, the Prince of Darkness, then instead of being like John Schwartz from Amsterdam, everybody going like, I don't know what he's doing, sounds like the guy can't play, and you let Miles do it, it's genius. But Miles knew all that, you know, and he had the musicianship to be able to put all that together, you know. That's the genius in it. I mean, it's all, and also it's like Gil Evans used to say, he said, man, he had his own sound on trumpet. I mean, he played a couple notes. It's amazing to have that, you know. He knew what musicians to get. He knew how to guide the music. He just had a real insight. He'd have been a natural leader if he wasn't a musician. You know, he was funny, he was humorous. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing, you know, and it's like, you could do 1 million solo records, you could have a band, you could tour 300 days a year for 30 years, and the first question is going to be, it's like somebody saying let's say you're talking to a college professor who's written 42 books, and everybody says, so describe to me your first grade class with Mrs. Phillips. What was that like? And everybody talks about your first grade class, and the guy says, Jesus Christ, I've written 52 novels. I've traveled the world giving speeches for 22 years, and they're still asking about Mrs. Phillips in first grade. But on the other side of the coin, it's an honor to have been there, and I would never change a thing. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like it kind of gave me personally the inspiration to like trust my judgment. You know, to be able to like use crazy instruments. You know, like in the soul brass band, I was using banjo and stuff like that, but it was still funk and soul, but I was using different instruments. It just gave me the confidence to believe in what I'm doing. So it's a crazy answer to all these questions, to that question, but I'll say it in another tone. It's many come. No. Anyway.
About strengths in this musical adventure, where do you get it from?
About what?
French.
Strength.
The power.
Strength. Oh, from the music. you know, and from the musicians around you. You know, it's yeah. I mean, we all feed on the music, you know, and we, you know, it feeds, you know, whatever part of you needs feeding, basically, you know. To, you know, with, well, I guess with some obvious, you know, limits, but yeah, no, we feed on the music.
Thank you. Dean?
I try to get to the point where I don't exist. Really, I'm serious when I'm playing. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be screwing it up. Yeah. You know, I just want to be in the moment and let whatever energy is in the room just to be the energy that defines what's going on. And so as soon as I start thinking about, oh, I could play this cool lick that I played yesterday or do something, and then all of a sudden I do nothing. Now all of a sudden it's like a wall, you know, that happens. So as far as that kind of strength, I take it, I get it from just from, like I said, trying to not be anything, like not have any ego or like not think like I'm great or I suck or any, you know, none of that. You know, just be the music, you know. Be the music, and that helps me to get, you know, to not be scared as shit every time I play.
You know. Thank you, Bill.
Well, I mean, you know, it's what we do is tough. If you knew the travel situation we've had the last 4 days,
I've heard it.
It's unbelievable.
Yes.
And it's all to go out and play for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do 2 flights. We'll get up at 3:30 in the morning, 3-4 days in a row. Get back to the hotel at 12. I didn't sleep at all. I've got 3 hours sleep in 4 days. And so it's like, yeah, exactly. So it's like you have to really like what you're doing in order to get up there and for that 90 minutes. Everything is for that 90 minutes, you know. Well, so it's like
I'm very grateful that you are here with me.
We're grateful.
Well, they told us it paid a lot of money.
It doesn't?
No, I'm just kidding.
My next question is, well, this generation and the next generation, it's different than you had. What kind of message do you want to give the new generation? And I mean the music.
Well, you know what I tell them? It's like a lot of the young musicians have told me, they said, well, when you were coming up, there were bands. I'm speaking for jazz. Like, I could think, well, I'd love to play in with Elvin Jones. Miles was having a sabbatical at the time when I was in college, so I wasn't thinking he was even an option. But you know, there's John McLaughlin, there's Herbie Hancock, there's Chick Corea, there's all these guys that you could look forward to the possibility of getting good enough to play with. And a lot of young musicians now say like, wow, there's really not a lot of those guys. So what I tell them is, you know, the great bands, the most innovative bands, the most popular bands are not even created yet. You know, you guys, you know, you just play your instrument as good as you possibly can, keep a positive attitude, and it'll all fall and let the universe take its place. I mean, to follow its course, and you know, some of the greatest bands are going to be put together by some of the people now. You don't have to see it necessarily. You know, just let it all happen, and it'll you don't need to see all these bands. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Dean?
I don't know. I think it's you just want to be when it comes to the idea of you know, history or that kind of thing. I don't know. I think what would help people in moving forward, in not just in music, in everything, is to just slow down. Slow down a little bit so you can comprehend things more. You know what I mean? In other words, things go so fast now that you just kind of scratch the surface of it and move on, like for a fix of energy, you know, and then you get it and you move on. So I try to urge people to slow down a little bit, just so they can enjoy it, like a nice glass of wine or something. You know, they don't really appreciate that.
Yes,
you know,
enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, Darryl.
What was the question?
The message to this generation.
To this generation.
Everything goes faster and faster.
I kind of tend to agree with Dean. What's your name? Dean?
Yeah.
No, I kind of tend to agree with Dean. I think there's so much information out
Too
there
much.
now, you know. I wouldn't say that there's too much, but I just say that the way in which you take it in needs to be a little bit more, maybe might need to be a little bit more methodical you might need to, it might be good to take your time with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the other thing is to, and hopefully this is beginning to come back again, but to get out and play with other musicians, because it's very easy to get caught up on, okay, now I'm going to learn this thing on YouTube, and then after that I'm going to learn the next thing on YouTube. And if you don't actually get out and do it with other musicians, then you get good at what you do. You get good at copying other people's stuff. You don't get good at being a playing and working musician.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things. And I actually do see that. You see guys who have incredible facility, but when you sit them in an ensemble situation, they don't really know how to communicate and how to connect with other musicians because they've been spending so much time just trying to get the chops together.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your wise words, and I want to thank you and wish you all the love and the luck and of course good health.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.